Any other board members that may not be here that accepted? It looks like Tara declined. I don't know about Doug. Is Doug on?
Yep.
Doug's on.
Yep, Doug's on.
We're not
Okay.
allowed to reshelve his books, but he's on.
And Horty was supposed to be set up at Bandon, but I'm not seeing her on there, so I don't know.
Down there's an HJ. Isn't that her?
Yeah, I see her on the list.
Oh,
yeah, I helped her get on.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order.
Hold on, let me turn on the video.
Oh, we're going to start the video.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order for the March 4th Coos Library Board. And first up is introductions. So I'll start. I am Lori Nordahl. I am the board chair, and I am the representative for North Bend outside city limits within District 9. And I'm just going to go right down the list as I see the participants and call on you. So next up I have Barbara Caffey. Silent. Okay, let's move on to Betty Vaughn. Okay, they're either stepped away from their screen right now. Carol. You're muted, Carol.
Where did everybody go?
Sorry, I was muted too. I'll go back to Betty Vaughn, Dora Library.
Awesome. And Carol, we didn't get your hello. I saw your. There we go.
She's muted also.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, Carol, we'll come back in a second if you can figure that mute button out. Christina.
Hi, Christina Kaufman, Deputy Director, Coos Bay Public Library.
Thank you. Doug.
Hi, Doug Worth, Coos Library Board. Going from memory here, I think it's number 2 outside Coos Bay city limits. And I forget which library district it's with.
You're part of the team. Yay.
Yay.
Francis.
Hello, I'm City of Coos Bay inside the city on the library board.
Nice, thank you. Haley.
Haley Lagacy, Director, North Bend Public Library.
Thank you. Horty.
Horty Joyce. Here I am.
Yay.
Bandon Library Board.
Nice.
What else?
Nice to hear you.
Nice to see you all.
Jennifer.
Jennifer Croft, Bandon Library Director.
Thanks. Thank you. Joni.
I think Joni might be having issues with her microphone today.
Okay.
She's our powers director.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to Sammy.
Sammy Pearson, Director of the Coos Bay Public Library.
Thank you. And Shanna.
I'm Shanna Allen, Director of the Myrtle Point Library.
Thank you. And by the way, all you library directors, our teens love you. I have, every time they say where they're from and they talk about the public library, mention you, and they love you guys. So I just want to put that. Shanna, you reminded me because I was talking to somebody from the Myrtle Point area. And I think the Cinco's. I shouldn't say that. Okay, Stacy.
I'm Stacy Nix. I'm the Extended Service Office Administrator.
Nice. Thank you. And Teresa.
Teresa Lucas, North Bend Public Library Assistant Director.
Nice. And Tad is
Thad is one of our.
Yeah. He's in the background making sure it all works for us, right?
Yeah, him and Tyler both.
And Tyler. Awesome. Okay, back up to Barbara. Did you get your microphone fixed? Barbara Cappy. Okay. How about Carol?
I think I'm on. Can you hear me now?
Yay!
Yay! Finally. I represent City of North Bend, in city within North Bend School District.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Okay, next up on the agenda is agenda changes. So are there any changes to the agenda? Has everybody had a chance to pull that up in their mail? Okay, hearing none, we will move forward with this agenda. So next up is approval of the minutes from December 3rd. And thank you, Stacy, for getting those out to us.
Sorry they were so late.
So I had a chance to look them over. I'm wondering, do people need a little more time, though? Not hearing anybody needing more time, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from December 3rd.
I move approval. This is Francis.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Carol.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from December 3rd. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This is a real listening game, right? I can't see everybody on my screen at once, so I'm listening if you speak up or chat. I suppose I'm not watching that either. If somebody could keep their eye on that for me, that'd be great. Okay, the minutes from December 3rd have been approved. Old business. Do we have anything, Stacy?
I don't think so.
And I didn't see anything from the last meeting because we're doing it. We're doing the budget. Okay, let's go on to new business, which is the budget discussion. And this is where I'm going to step back. And let me tell us about it, Stacy.
Let me get in here and share my screen really quick. Maybe. Come on. Sorry, my computer has decided it wants to think right now. Where did it go? There it is. Okay, so we met with the city manager of Coos Bay and the finance director of Coos Bay to help us kind of get the numbers all flushed out. Our carryover is quite a bit higher than it was last year, probably mainly due to the COVID, and it kind of messed with everything. So our carryover this year is $440,000, which makes the amount that ESO needs to hold over from the county quite a bit less. So we're at $490 on that from the county this year. Moving down to our materials and services, there's really no big changes from our last meeting where we discussed it. I can go into each of the different tabs down at the bottom if you guys would like. Any suggestions? Any questions on any of it?
I don't have a question just yet on materials, but I wanted to go back up to the carryover and ask a question. So if we're carrying over more, I know you have to carry over a certain amount to get through payroll and et cetera until taxes come through. But with COVID and the potential of spending less, is there any opportunity for libraries in our county to receive more funds rather than, I mean, maybe you can explain that or direct that to me rather than it sitting in an account that they might be able to use for materials for patrons or
for the carryover specifically?
Yeah.
So our expenses with a lot of our stuff, especially our contractuals, come out, we pay annually, and so it's paid a lump sum at the beginning of the year. So our expenses for the beginning of the year for ESO personnel and our materials and services is, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. I want to say it was between 250 and 350, 250,000 and 350,000 before we received that first check. So that's kind of what that carryover is there for, to make sure that we have those funds to pay that before because ESO doesn't receive their first check from the county until November, December.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why that is there. Coming to down at the end, you'll see where we have our contingency. And the way that ESO carries their contingency is that is kind of what rolls. We keep it higher. That way next year, the next fiscal year, it will roll over into that carryover to cover those costs. So if it's larger next year, then that will be even less money that ESO will take from the county, which will then, of course, increase what the libraries individually will get. I don't know if that kind of helps answer that.
Yes, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, so moving back down to our expenses. Does anybody have any questions about any of that?
We just have this isn't about that, but Carol's lost video and audio.
Oh, no.
So we kind of want her to hear this. Let's see. Where'd she go? I saw that. I saw the. I am not used to Microsoft Teams here.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been having trouble with it also.
I can't even see her spot. Does anybody see her on there? Back to participants.
Yep. I can see her CV. She may have to log out and log back on.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm just trying to get her that
on
message.
hold. I don't know what that means.
So can you in Microsoft, well, I'll just do a general chat, I guess.
Okay, are you back, Carol?
Do you see her on there? On hold. That is strange.
Uh-oh, where did she go now?
She's under at the bottom of the list of participants, just on hold.
I moved her as, no, it still says on hold. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either. Anyway, I was going to tell her to try leaving and coming back in.
She still had chat though, because or did she? No. There we go.
She's in a call. Maybe she's trying to call in. Maybe? That's weird. Oh, these are our magic workers behind the scenes trying to help us. That's what I call our district network administrator, the man behind the curtain, the wizard. Okay, well, I hate to keep everybody up. Maybe she's coming back on. I don't see her at all now.
Can someone call her on the phone and ask her to sign off and back on?
Yeah, I think she might have because I don't see her in our list. Oh, she's at the bottom as others from chat.
Yeah, I sent her a request to join.
Okay.
So let's see if that works.
Okay.
Stacy, can you just point out if there's any significant increases or decreases in this year's proposed amount versus 2021?
Sure. So nothing really is too different. One thing that I did want to bring up, though, is the insurance number. Our insurance agency with the city discovered that we do not have a liability insurance policy that covers the board. It was never set up when ESO was established 30 years ago. So she's working with the county council in order to get that insurance policy set up. So that will affect that number. She had no estimates for me on what that'll be, though. So that I did want to bring that up really quick. For anything else, we had an increase in advertising. The directors had kind of discussed doing kind of a mass advertising campaign to advertise Coastline or CCLSD as a whole instead of just the individual libraries advertising for each individual library. So we added money into the advertising part of that for a mass advertisement. Aside from that,
I have a question about the equipment maintenance contract.
Okay.
Budgeted 120,000, but you've only spent 83,000 so far this fiscal year.
Sure. So we have inside our equipment maintenance contract, we have Bywater, which is the company that manages our Koha catalog for us, the Koha side of it. And the reason that there was an increase in that, first off, between last year and this year, is because they are going to be hosting our servers for our Koha on a cloud through them now instead of a physical server that was housed at North Bend Library. So that was a slight increase there. It kind of was a wash between what we used to pay North Bend for that server space versus what we'll be paying them. It's roughly the same. The advantage of having it on the cloud is the fact that they manage that Koha. They manage Koha for us. So with them hosting the service, it kind of cuts out that middleman of having to have Executech do that, manage the physical servers. And then also Aspen Discovery, which is an update to Koha that will kind of bring our digital content and the physical catalog kind of together. It's kind of just taking it to the next step. And then the reason that a lot of that portion of hasn't been used yet is due to Executech. We pay them monthly, and it's roughly $6,200, I believe, a month is what we pay them for our maintenance fees, and we do that monthly. So it should balance out to be close to the budget towards the end of the year.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Uh-huh. And going back here, printing, everything else is pretty much similar, just slight tweaks here and there. But yeah, those are pretty much the big ones.
Any other questions? Is there more you need to go over?
Not really. We go down here. This kind of cuts into the next.
I looked at that.
The next item on the agenda, I think, which is, well, it's letter C, but I'll go ahead and discuss it since we're talking about the budget, We left 60,000 in the budget for our overlay for vehicles, or our outlay for vehicles for last year. We are wanting to use that fund to replace our outreach truck. We replaced the courier truck last year. We're wanting to replace the outreach truck this year. It's kind of approaching the end of its life, starting to have some issues. So the board has just the directors group has discussed using that to purchase it before the end of our current fiscal year, which is why you can see that we have it at 20,000 for our overlay next year, which we're anticipating the vehicle will cost around $5,000 for the vehicle and all of the outfitting, signage, and everything for it, which would leave $10,000 carried over. And then we discussed putting $10,000 into that outlay each year to build it up for when we need to replace the next vehicle. So that's that. And then the contingency, we have it at 150,000, and that is for contingencies of things that might come up. Also, it is what will factor into our carryover next year in order for us to be able to function for that first half of the year. After doing a lot of extensive work with the city manager's office and the finance office, and figuring out what exactly the expenses are for that first half of the year, and what will be carried over from the previous budget, we have kind of settled on around 150. So we're going to try to keep it at about 150 for that contingency moving forward, so that we are covered for that, so that those expenses can get paid.
Okay.
Any other questions on the budget? We kind of went through this last meeting. I know not everybody was there though, so I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Okay, so at this point, we need to approve not approve, I guess what we're doing is recommending this budget to go to the county commissioners. And you guys all set me straight. This is my first time doing this, so Doug?
I move that we put forward this budget as a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on this motion? It's the waiting game. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we recommend this budget move forward to the county commissioners. All those in favor say aye or wave or
Aye.
aye. Okay, any opposed? Please, thank you, Francis. I see your hand. Any opposed? Nay, please. Okay, motion carries. Yay, Stacy. Budget done to move forward.
Yay!
I wanted to take a second. I'm seeing a couple people on here that we didn't introduce, and one is Teresa Lucas. So if Teresa, if you're on here, you want to say a quick hi and what library?
Hi, I'm Teresa Lucas, Assistant Director, North Bend Public Library.
Nice. And also Cheryl Young. And Cheryl is out at Lakeside. I don't see her doing her mic, so just wanted to recognize those people were.
I'm here.
Oh, yay.
I'm
Cheryl.
But I can barely see anybody, and it keeps kicking me off, and it won't let me back on. So if I disappear, it's because I can't get back on.
Well, I apologize. I didn't see you earlier and wanted to make sure everybody knew that you were with us. So thank you for being here. And Teresa as well. Okay, so now we're moving on to the allocation committee members. Thank you for your work. And Haley is going to give us an update.
Okay, so the allocation committee at under the direction of the CLB met on February 25th. At the meeting, Linda Kirk, myself, Horty, and Carol were present. Doug is also a member of that committee, but he was unable to join us that day. We began by reviewing the progress that we've made in assessing the existing allocation and the steps that we've taken towards revising the formula or establishing a new formula for the allocation. And the primary accomplishment is that we did successfully determine the service area populations and boundaries for service areas for the various libraries, and that has been adopted by the CLB and is now in place. We discussed next steps. First on our list is regarding the timeline for this process for the assessment. And we, through our discussion, determined that we need more guidance from the CLB as to what that timeline is. We feel that it would be helpful for us as a committee in our work to have a better sense of what the board's expectations are for both determining the criteria and setting the formula, and then also for implementing that formula so that we can better plan our work. So we can come back to that at the end of my report, and maybe the board can have some discussion about that. For the time being, considering our circumstances with COVID and the libraries being, the libraries operating under modified plans right now, the committee recommends that we focus on two primary tasks. The first one is to clarify the process of adjusting the allocation, or you could also say setting a new formula. Horty and Carol have volunteered on our committee to work on this element. We feel that we need to define the stakeholders in the process and more clearly lay out what that actual approval process for a new allocation formula will be. That procedure isn't really outlined anywhere right now, and just based on our prior experiences in the recent years in taking up big and important issues like this, we think it would be helpful for all involved to have a more clearly defined process. So we recognize that it's ultimately up to the CLB to set that allocation formula, and then of course forward that on to the commissioners for the actual dispersal of funds to the libraries. But we recognize that there are a lot of stakeholders in this process, and that it would be appropriate for each to have an opportunity to weigh in. So library directors, individual library boards, city administration, all of those people are going to need to have an opportunity to have their positions, I think you could say, made clear in the process, because everybody's going to have to get on board with whatever formula or solution we come up with. We all have to have our cities each, or governing entities, sign the contract each year, and so we think it's appropriate for everyone to have a role in the process. The second task that we are going to focus on is identifying the criteria to be used in the formula. So we had reached consensus that service area population was a criteria that we would consider, but given some lessons learned in the past year about library operations under COVID, the committee kind of feels that it would be appropriate for us to revisit those criteria. It may be something that we look back on what we had been working towards before and we just confirm that, but it may be something that needs more discussion in light of the last year's operations. So the committee has identified that as a task. I will be working on that with Linda Kirk, and right now the plan is to kind of do a review of the prior criteria that had been discussed, take that to the library directors group for input and discussion, and then we'll bring that back to the committee prior to bringing any recommendations to the CLB. So we are scheduled to meet again at the end of March, and I'll take us back to our first task, which was timeline. And Lori, if you could help us a little bit, leading some discussion on what the will of the CLB is regarding timeline, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Wow, this is such a huge project and has such implications for so many that it's not something we want to take lightly, in my opinion, or rush. But we do need to deal with it. So ideas, does anybody I mean, I'm thinking a good step is that criteria, identifying that criteria as a beginning step, and working, and both of those tasks you're working on are huge. But when I think about timelines in terms of implementing, once we get, you know, what our process is going to be and what the criteria is going to be, the process is going to take time too, because if there's input from stakeholders, we need to provide that in some manner. And there's public law meeting law, right? So we have to make sure that we're open about that as well. And then even implementing, once we get it down to, okay, this is what we're going to go with, I think that to make a change in one swift move from one year to the next could be very difficult for libraries and directors to, I mean, if you were cut some funds, that could be difficult if there were adjustments in that way. So I'm almost thinking, my thought is an implementation timeline as well, so that we can ease into how that may affect libraries. But I don't know. I think that's where we would get some input there from the library directors as well. So other thoughts about timeline? Right now, I'm just throwing some ideas out there.
Well, it had been discussed before. Well, first of all, it's been 22 years, I think it's been, or 23 since the formula has been changed. And so there's a lot of imbalance going on there. What we had discussed before was that we would calculate a new formula, but then amortize the difference between the current and the new formula over a 10-year period. That was kind of where the last I had heard.
Okay, so I'm hearing two schedules. One is for the committee work, the actual making the formula recommendations and getting that approved and moving it through the channels. And then Doug, your suggestion for a schedule for actually applying the new formula. That's very helpful. Kind of taking your comments and combining them with some discussion that we had just a little bit ago in our directors meeting. Something that we incorporated into the adjustment of the service populations was the timing of state reporting. I think it sounds like it might be a good and reasonable goal to make progress or try to determine what the criteria will be prior to the next round of state reporting, so that as we library directors move into a new statistical year, if there are any adjustments that we need to make to the method that we're using to count things, attendance, participation, open hours, all of those different factors, whatever they may turn out to be for the formula's purposes, so that we could make appropriate adjustments to our internal processes. Let me ask my fellow library directors, we are halfway on the way to a new statistical year. Is that a reasonable goal, or do you think that in consideration of the current circumstances that that's going to be pushing it to try to get criteria set in time?
Before this next October report, you're saying?
Yes.
Well, if we put new criteria in now, we have not been counting that way.
Right. No, not to take the statistics, but to say that starting on July 1, which would be the new statistical year, we would count from there on out.
Gotcha.
I think it's a reasonable goal.
Yeah, we can handle that.
Lori, does that fit with the timeline that you have in mind for the committee work?
I think so, but I mean, I'm only one on this board. I'm thinking that's very reasonable, like set the criteria and hopefully, the board would be informed of that as well. So you're saying that would hopefully, you'd have something in place later this fall, October, November? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, I think, it may also be, this is good, our timeline may need to be a work in progress, because the other factors that are going to come into play on this are those stakeholders. So if we're going to make significant changes in the criteria or the weighting of the formula, it may take longer to get all of that stakeholder input gathered up, and we may figure that out sooner or later. So I don't think, Lori, that we have to make any concrete decisions based on timeline today. I think the committee just needed a little more guidance on, is this a one-year project? Is this, in terms of making a new formula, is that a one-year project? Is that a 3-year project? Kind of where your expectations lie.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking that I know we've had COVID, obviously, but I know we've been working on it for a while, and with that, it hasn't been changed since 23 years. I would love to see something set within a year and a half, so we can begin to move forward. Yeah, I don't know what the rest of you were thinking, rather than a 3-year period.
So is this something that could be implemented in budget year 22-23, and then we work backwards from there? A new formula ready to go by 22-23?
I'm not sure that it could be done. The whole thing could be done. The implementation could start that soon. But I'm thinking this next year, if we can get the criteria down and begin that talk about how the process is going to go and try and iron that out, then maybe the next year we can get the process and the input from the stakeholders. And then as a board, we can agree then on what the allocation formula is to go to the city, or the county commissioners will have to ultimately approve this, correct?
Yes.
And then it could be implemented. I don't see it being implemented before 2024.
2023, 24?
Let's see, that would be right now 2 years from it. Yes, at the earliest.
23, 24.
In my opinion.
Okay, because I think if you have an endpoint, then you can work backwards for your steps.
Gotcha. So maybe I would ask that the committee talk about that at their next meeting in terms of how they see that feasibility, if what we're saying is kind of a board expectation, that is reasonable. And we don't know with, we could have another big COVID something, and then we're back at the, we're holding off again. But as long as we can move forward, I would suggest that.
Okay, thank you, Lori. So just to confirm, I'm hearing, Francis, I love that suggestion to start with the implementation end date and go backwards. It's very helpful. Thank you. So just to confirm, though, we would be looking at beginning to implement and to apply the new formula in the fiscal year 2023-24. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Also with Doug's, the original idea of amortizing that over 10-year period, of course.
Okay.
Or some year period if we don't want it to be 10, but that's another thing I think library directors would have a big input on, because you guys would see the funding and how it's going to impact. So as a group, you would have a major say in that, in my opinion.
Okay. Were there any other questions from the board or others in attendance, the directors today, that about the committee meeting or comments?
Just a huge thank you for putting in the work, and that's a major project.
Right, well, that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Okay, new outreach van, I think we already discussed. What kind of a vehicle is it? I'm just curious, Stacy. Are we looking at?
I was muted. Okay, so the vehicle that we received last time is a Ford Connect high-roofed, long bed transit van, and that's what we're using as the courier van. There was some mistake with the person that ordered it for us, and we actually had requested the extra long van, which is 3 feet longer than the one that we received and the one that was actually ordered. So my suggestion is that we order the longer one now, rotate it into being the courier vehicle, and then the current courier vehicle that we bought last year will then become the outreach vehicle. So we're just going to do a little shift because Chad, our outreach technician, doesn't need that extra length, but the courier obviously could with all of the materials that he transports between. So it is a high-roofed, long bed courier van that is Ford Transit.
Nice, that sounds good. I was curious if it was similar or, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be the same, just a little bit longer. And then we did some modifications to the current one that now putting it into use, we have discovered aren't necessarily necessary, i.e. the lift isn't used. It's a different mount type than the old truck, so it's not as user friendly and it takes up more time than if he just loads and unloads from the side door. So we're not going to be doing a lift in the new van. We've discussed we're going to look into different types of ramps instead. And then pretty much the outfitting will be the same. Other than that, it'll have shelves in the back, divider door between the courier or the crate and the driver for that protection. Yeah, and then it'll be fully signed. We're going to do the logos on the side the same as the current vehicle, so which is just the Coastline logo, very basic, but gets our information out there. And the vehicle itself, the person at the city that does the ordering for us stated that the vehicle should be around $45,000. Outfitting should be no more than $5,000, especially since we're not doing that lift. So he's recommending $50,000 budgeted for that.
Nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is the ESO report.
Lori, can I interrupt just for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
I think just to be safe, I think you'll need a motion on that.
Oh.
Just so that it can proceed through the rest of the finance process without having to come back. Okay,
and so I have a question on that. If the recommendation is 50, should our motion be a little more because, you never know? Or is that something we can pull from contingency?
We have it in that outlay. There's 60,000 in that outlay.
Yeah.
So depending on what we end up using for that, we'll just reflect what next year's budget is left in that outlay. I think, though, Sammy, correct me if I'm wrong, the city needs kind of a max number that we will spend.
Yes. So you could say up to
55,500,
or if you want, or something like that.
Okay, so the motion is to go ahead and purchase the outreach van up to X amount. Who wants to fill in the blank?
I would like to make a motion that we acquire this van for the ESO up to a maximum of $62,500.
Wow.
Just in case.
Last of the big spenders.
Okay, Francis. Yeah, Francis is a second. Any further discussion on the outreach van?
Yes. Now, you said you were going to swap it out with the other one, perhaps, but you didn't need to get a lift. Does the other one have a lift? And so would you need a lift on this one too?
So the current one that's being used as the courier van will become the outreach van. The lift is not being utilized by the courier driver at all. He actually loads and unloads from the side door. So he puts his cart, pulls his cart out, sets it on the ground, and does all his loading that way, which has been a lot more convenient and fast. Our previous truck, prior to getting the transit van, was a big box truck, and the lift was an exterior lift. So when he was loading and unloading, he could leave the lift on the ground. And so he didn't have to store it over and over at each stop. In the van, it's an interior lift. So every time he unloads something, he then has to retract the lift, put it in, close the doors, lock them. So it adds a lot of time. So it hasn't been utilized at all. It will be when the current vehicle becomes the outreach vehicle. Chad will most likely utilize that because of the type of carts that he uses at his outreach stops. So that lift will become utilized in his process, but with the new van that we're purchasing becoming the courier van, it shouldn't need a lift.
Any further questions? Okay, the motion on the floor is to purchase the outreach van for a maximum of $62,500. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hands. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, and thank you, Sammy. Okay, now we're to the ESO report.
All right, so we over in ESO have just been plugging along with the new parameters of our office now with COVID. ILL services are the highest they've been for February. The month of February was the highest numbers it has been since we've started back last summer after the closure. So that's good news. I'm also going to be filling the ILL position finally. I've been kind of just doing double duty, but that position is going to be, and then once I have a person in that position, we'll be able to open up the parameters that we have set for ILL loaning, because we have it dialed way back just to keep it at a manageable level. So once we get that position filled, we'll be able to increase that more, which should have those numbers growing even more. Outreach, Chad is our outreach technician, and he is doing his best to get as much material out to the outreach patrons as possible. Most of the nursing homes that he visits and assisted livings are still closed. He has his people at each of the places that he has worked with for years, and he knows the items that they like, what they like to see. So he's able to drop off crates full of things for them each month he just drops it off at their lobby, their front desk, and then they distribute them to the people, and they can view their material or read their books, and then he rotates it out the next month. So he is able to do that. He's not able to do his lobby stops like he used to do. His patrons have definitely been wanting it back, but with COVID, we're just kind of doing what we can. His books by mail have ramped up. He does send to some of the facilities that he can't get into to drop things off. His patrons there, he's signed up for books by mail, so he sends them to them specifically, as well as just homebound patrons. His numbers have almost tripled in the amount of mailings that he does, because he's able to get more people signed up for that because they can't make it into the libraries. So that's good. And then our digital content, our Overdrive, which is our ebooks and e-audiobooks is still going strong. It died down a little bit once the libraries were able to start getting material out, but it's staying pretty consistently strong. So that's about it for ESO. Any questions?
Nope. Hearing none, we'll move on to the director's report. And who wants to start?
Well, since everybody's jumping at once,
Awesome.
I'll start. This is Sammy. I don't know how many of you watch fabulous public access TV, but our city council did finally make a decision on where our new library will be Tuesday night, and it'll be in John Toppitz Park, north of the Armory building, the current Armory building. So that settles that, and so we can move on doing many, many other things in relation to that. Other than that, our new security system is being finalized today. Our new RFID gates are going in and self-checkouts are going in, and yay, that's been almost a year-long project that we thought wouldn't quite take a year, but it did. So those are the big happenings here.
Thank you. And the other volunteers?
I'll go next. This
Thanks.
is Haley. Let's see. Okay. So, oh, sorry, my camera's off. Let me turn it on. All right. So, at North Bend, we have been working on a new program that is in collaboration with the South Coast Regional Early Learning Hub that is going to offer a kindergarten readiness program for 20 families here in Coos County. It is called Ready, Set, Kindergarten, and it is going to be held virtually because we are doing this program in collaboration with the Hub. We have some extra funding, and we are going to be able to provide all of the technology that participants need in order to participate in the program. So that means that all of the families all 20 families will receive an iPad, and that will actually be theirs to keep because they will also be able to use that to continue to access library resources after the conclusion of the program. We're going to use our existing hotspots to provide Wi-Fi access to those who don't have a good home internet connection. And so this is kind of a unique program. It's definitely something new. We're kind of stretching a little bit here at North Bend to do this new thing, and we're really excited about it. Also, the library is working on an RFID project for ourselves as well. The library board will meet next Wednesday and review the quotes from vendors for an RFID system. So those are two big things that are happening here at North Bend.
Next.
I'll go next.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay. So I guess RFID is the theme of this meeting because our friends group voted or decided recently to use the funds from the Marjorie Wilson bequest, or the remaining funds from the Marjorie Wilson bequest, to go ahead and upgrade Bandon to having RFID as well. So we are just in the beginning stages of that project, still working out how before we even begin to start it. But yeah, we're moving in that direction too. And then in addition to that, I don't think I've mentioned to this group that we're doing digital editions. I think the directors group is probably tired of hearing about it, but our staff kind of conceptualized that one of the things that our patrons were missing most about having the library be here and open during COVID was coming in and like reading magazines and reading the newspapers and just in person sitting down and doing that. We can't offer that service right now, but we decided to go ahead and divert those periodical funds plus some leftover funding we had from the CARES grant that we received to go ahead and purchase virtual access to those newspapers and databases or newspapers and magazines. If I can share my screen, I can show you guys where to find it, because we can actually share it with the whole district. So how do I do that, Stacy? Let's see.
Up in the very top or next to where your camera and your microphone are, there's a little white
Share
square that
content?
has an arrow in it.
Great, let's try that. There it is.
And then it'll open a box at the bottom and it'll say, oh, you got it.
It's not showing the whole thing though. Let's see if I can open that up. There we go. Okay, so this is the bandonlibrary.org/digital editions. This is where you'll find that. And we have all the login information for these newspapers that we have available. I do have, like I said, we got unlimited access. We made sure that they were all good with knowing that we were sharing it and all there. So we bought Flipster, and these are some of the magazines we have available via Flipster. I actually, after our last meeting, just checked in with the stats because I hadn't looked at them. But after the directors talked about it, I was curious. So I logged in and looked at the stats, and it turns out that Flipster titles were downloaded 160 times through February for just what we have shared so far. So, and then we also have Press Reader, which is now authenticating through SIP. So for Flipster, you'll have to enter this user ID and password to get access. But through Press Reader, you can download the app or you can visit on the web, and it will authenticate through your through Koha. So through not RFID, but through your library card number and password. And I wanted to thank Sammy also for a lot of the work that she did to help get us that working and authenticating. And I think I gave you back the screen. Did I do that right? Awesome. Okay, all done.
So this seems like too good to be true that if the whole district can use this, really, seriously? That's like crazy awesome.
Yeah, like I said, I when I ordered the newspapers, I checked with each of them, and none of them had an issue with me sharing the user ID and password. That might change once they see how much it's getting used, and if it does, they may shut me down. But I mean, where I'm sitting, they said yes. So until they say no, I'm gonna share as widely as I can. So
nice. Thank you. Okay, who is the next victim? I mean, who would like to go next?
Well, I guess I can tell you that COVID, of course, is affecting. This is Betty from Dora. Affecting us all similarly. Our patrons are desperate to come back in the library, so hopefully some things will change around here. We're just keeping really busy trying to keep our patron base satisfied. We have only one person, as always, working at a time, and trying to keep PR out there to let people know what we're actually doing. I even though we're not, patrons are not coming in right now, it seems like I'm busier than ever just trying to keep up on those kinds of things, keeping materials in line and making sure everybody knows what we're doing and what's available. So I'm sure that's happening in the other small libraries around. So that's all I'm doing.
Yes, thank you. I know you guys are doing great things for community during this time. All those things make a difference for sure. Who am I missing? I don't know if Cheryl's still on or Joni. Shanna, Myrtle Point.
Well, Betty really said it. Is yes, they're not in the building, but we're on the phone with them 6 hours a day at least, and really hustling to keep them happy. And I think they're happy, or as happy as they can be under the circumstances. I've been hearing a lot about how people are just really grateful to get their items, and someone sent us a card saying, "Thank you for defeating boredom and despair. And I was like, that's the nicest thing I've heard all year. So defeating boredom and despair, that's what we're doing in all the libraries. In other news, we're proceeding with a renovation. Yeah. We're going to make ourselves ADA accessible and going to add a special room on the front of the building to protect those pretty carved doors and make it be the organ room. And so my organ collection can spread out, and the meeting room's going to have it's going to be a hybrid space. So when the teenagers are done with school, they're going to be in there and they can have a wall instead of a shelf. And I'm really excited to spread out the collection. And I don't know what I'm doing. This is my first renovation. I'm going to stop talking now, but I've got a lot of helpers, so.
Nice. Right. Okay. Who else? Help me out here. I have Lakeside Curry Powers, but I'm not sure they're all on here. I can't really tell.
Joni's microphone has not been working today.
Okay.
Joni, if you can hear us, you can put it in text and we can, or in the chat option, and if you have any updates.
Just started raining.
Or she can double duty next time.
Or you can double duty next time.
Or Joni. Around the spot.
And then I don't think there's anybody from Coquille on. That would be Sarah or Ivy, and I don't see that either of them are on.
Yeah, and it looks like she was having difficulty anyway. I don't see her either. So I think that wraps up the director's report. Anything else for the good of the order? Questions, comments? Okay, well, I want to thank everybody again for your time today, and I'll look at the calendar and get with Stacy for our next meeting, and we'll go from there. Have a super day, everybody.
Oh,
Thank you. You too.
Before you all leave, Stacy, did you want to tell them about OLA?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, I totally forgot. So OLA, the Oregon Library Association's conference each year, is usually done in person. They're, of course, not doing that this year. They're doing a virtual conference instead. And they had some cool different options to involve your organization, library organizations. So I actually, we weren't able to do our staff development for CCLSD this year due to COVID. So we're going to use those funds instead, and I bought a library organization discount to cover all of the members of our library organization. So all of the library staff, all the board members, all the Coos Library board members, so they can all attend the OLA conference. And all the videos from the conference can be downloaded. You don't have to attend in person. They can be downloaded later, and we have access to that. I believe it's end of August. It's either end of August or end of October. I don't remember. But so I will shoot all of our library board members the discount code. And if any of you want to sign up for that so that you can see what we're doing for OLA this year. But yeah, we thought that was kind of cool because usually each library can only send 1 to 2 people. Some libraries don't send anybody because it's just not in a budget. So with this, all of the staff at all the libraries was able to do it.
Like, that's fantastic. Gosh, you didn't tell me it was going to be like Christmas today. We got Flipster, magazines online, OLA conference. What great news. Thank you. That sounds fabulous.
Oh, wait, and Haley just messaged. Was it Haley? Did you? Yeah. So the conference agenda will include sessions specifically for board members and advocates.
Excellent.
So yeah, that was kind of cool, and you guys get to be involved in OLA too. So I will shoot you guys all that email with that code, and then you just go in, you create an OLE membership account, and then it'll tell you when you go to pay, you put in this code, and it's $0.
Excellent. Thank you so much. What a good way to end the meeting.
Yes.
Okay, everybody have a great day, and we'll look forward to that information.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everybody, for real this time.